Hello, everybody. This is Meredith Loughran, and welcome to Lady Geek Live. It is Sunday, and it's 5 o'clock. I have a very special guest with me today. Her name is Melanie, quote unquote, Mel Mack. She's worked in the entertainment industry for nearly 20 years, teaching and coaching people who are trying to break into the industry or enhance their skill and timing. Mel helps talent by teaching them the art, science, and business they need to be successful. She does this by helping them gain confidence in front of the camera and to find the comedic timing in their scripts. She does this through workshops, career coaching, and advice sessions. She has worked from coast to coast in New York City and Los Angeles. And let me pull her in here. Hi, guys. That's me. I'm going to pull Mel right in here with me. Hi, Mel. Welcome to Lady Geek Live. Thank you for being with us this afternoon.
Thank you so much. This is exciting.
So I had an intro. We don't need you anymore. Get out of here.
Bye. See ya later. I'm finished.
No, but that's a lot. I mean, almost 20 years in the industry is not easy for anybody. It's got to be wearing, but it's got to be enriching too. Can you just tell us a little bit about your start in the entertainment industry? Like, how did you even get on this path?
Are you ready, Meredith, for this? How did I even get on this path? Wow. I started in Florida. And I was working at, get ready for it, Hooters. Worked at Hooters for a while. My parents, a Catholic college to end up bartending after graduation at Hooters. And somebody was like, hey, Mel, you should do commercials. You're funny, yada, yada. So I was like, oh, that's a great idea. I had started taking workshops there with a couple, Linda and John Fiore. They were amazing. And it was before like casting director workshops became casting director workshops. Long story short, I somehow got a manager and an agent. And I said, I would really like to be a series regular on a sitcom. And so, I was at a point where I couldn't put gas in my car. I'm not joking. I was constantly struggling. So when I know actors come to me that are struggling, I'm like, trust me, I get it. And my manager was like, please just take one more workshop. He's the head of NBC in LA. He is responsible for casting Seinfeld. And I was like, fine, forget it. I'm quitting after this, total tantrum. So I took the workshop, came in late. I wore like a terrible outfit. Like I was just like Rage Against the Machine. And, the scene was perfect. I was supposed to be like this bratty, like mid 20-year-old. And Mark Hirschfeld called me at my home the next day and he's like, hey, this is Mark. And I was living in like a a studio with like a little one burner. Right. And I thought it was my friend Mark. So I'm just like talking to him. This is when there weren't really cell phones. He's like, no, I'm sorry. This is Mark Hirschfeld. You took the workshop with me. I would be really interested in helping you come out to LA for pilot season and seeing if I could help you get an agent. So I was like, oh, this is how it happens for everybody, And so I went out to Los Angeles, totally naive. It was amazing. And then, from there, I ended up taking class with Leslie Kahn. She was great. Big mentor for me in LA, brilliant at comedy. That really helped me establish like an acting community family. I TA'd for her for a little bit. And, from there, my apartment burned down in LA. So when my apartment burned down, I'm like, I think I should leave. I've been here for 9 years. Through Leslie's, I had fallen into casting. So I started casting in commercials with Liz Paulson. And I believe Liz is still vice president of Fox. Her sister is Sarah Paulson. So I worked with Liz she was awesome. She was like the best person to learn from in casting. And she's like, you came from acting, mistakenly. I really like what you do in the room. I'd love to teach you how to run sessions and direct actors. And so from there, after my apartment burned down, I'm like, I really want to go back east. I had been working with house casting in LA when they opened, and I interviewed with them in New York, and they're like, great, we would love to have you. So I've been there for 10 years.
Wow. Some of those struggles, it's like you actually kind of stole one of my questions, because I was like, what are some of the struggles that you've had? having your apartment burned down, all of your stuff in there, and it's almost like, all right, I hear you, universe. Maybe this isn't where I need to be, and so you pivot. And I love those pivoting stories because you just never know where that's going to take you. But to stay in the industry after something like that, even though maybe you've had some success and maybe some failures and things like that, not everybody is successful at their auditions and stuff, and then to kind of go into casting, that I'm sure you didn't go all the way out west to say, to end up maybe I'm framing that badly, because I don't want to say that you're ending up anywhere, because I've seen some of the videos that you've done and you seem to really enjoy what you do.
Wow.
But that struggle to get there, what was there a point in time where you sat and go, I don't know if I'm doing this, maybe not going back to retail and restaurant work and Hooters and stuff like that, but what was your plan B?
I didn't have one.
Really?
Yeah. I was like, this is it. I'm going to be a series regular. I think I ended up in a position where I was auditioning for leads in films. And I just thought, like, this is how it happens, because I had done all my work. And then I started to get around other actors and I was like, oh, I didn't go to school for acting. Like, oh, I guess I'm supposed to start at like a co-star level. I wasn't, I was starting at like, I hit the ground running for series regular roles right out of the gate, and so I don't think I really believed in myself enough. And I think that's common, right? I think is an artist in general, everybody has a different idea of what their success is. And I think now that I'm getting a little bit older, I'm like, wow, success for me is being really happy with what I do, regardless of what people say, really trusting my own opinion, which is super hard in this industry, and just, it sounds so cliche, but like being a good human, in that I can also enjoy a lifestyle that I want to lead. And I think when I was acting, it was more like, I'm going to prove to that person in high school that I'm awesome, or whatever that was for me, and I really,
I want to be the it girl at the reunion, right?
Oh, yeah. But I'm not one of those. I'm not in a place when I was acting. I wasn't in a place when I transitioned into casting. It kind of went hand in hand. And, even my dear friend she still manages me. She's like, I have to manage you. I know you don't really want to audition at all, but I just have. I'm like, great. I'm happy to be Betty White, at like 75. That works for me. So, I wasn't that. I wasn't disappointed. I didn't go into it and I'm not jaded about it. I'm lucky to work with people at House Casting that are amazing and incredibly supportive of actors. I'm just really, it feels really good to help people,
Yeah. Well, this week, on a few of the shows that I've been a guest on, and just some of the articles that I've read has all kind of circled around imposter syndrome. And it's one of those struggles where it can make or break you. Some people say, oh, fake it till you make it. What are some of the tools that you've used to kind of overcome that, to say, like when you're saying, oh, maybe I don't belong here, and maybe not for you personally, but some of the advice that you give to some of your clients, some of the actors who come into your studio, and when do they come in kind of like, I'm ready to do this and take over the world, or do you have to battle with them to kind of get their mindset in the right place to overcome that imposter syndrome, to say, you are worthy, let's get to work? For yourself or for your clients, what are some of the tools that you use yourself, and how do you mentor other people through that? Because again, with your industry, they're in front of the camera, And that lack of confidence often is really challenging, and not everybody is good at it, um, but some people can just say, you know what, screw it. I'm just going to be me, and it's like I don't care what angle you're looking at, or just anything, whether it's how they speak, maybe an accent, maybe how they look, how they feel about themselves and things. There's so many of those different dynamics that make us say, maybe this isn't for me, but it's a dream. But at the same time, they're just they're creeping in the shadows of their own mindset, I think. And so we, whether it's a mantra, if you have one, or if it's just telling yourself every day those affirmations and things. So, again, I'm going to shut up and let you answer. But
no, I love this. No, I love what you're saying.
Yeah. So what are some of the tools or the things that you do to help overcome that when you're feeling it, and then how do you get your clients through that?
It's a really good question. I think some of the tools that get my clients through those feelings of basically inadequacy, right? That they're not good enough, is in class, I consistently share in the beginning. Like we just spend 10 minutes of sharing, and it's not like, I feel great. We've had people go through divorces and get kicked out of homes and been arrested and, all of these myriad of things that make us human. And I find that the actors who have stayed at the studio and really stayed the course, and every week show up for one another. And I require everybody to rehearse on a daily basis, 3 to 4 times a week. You don't work in class, because it's not like a basketball game. Like, hey guys, I wasn't here, practice for a year, but we're in the finals. So I'm here, I'm ready. And I think a lot of people treat the industry that way, and it's not. 15 years to make a star makes sense to me, because I think, at the studio, when people can really honor how they feel and use a monologue, or, we work with sides pretty much on a weekly basis. I try to get everybody like current sides or scripts, and you're able to channel that. I mean, I think that's the reason that actors become storytellers, is so that you can get raw and real, and it can help you. It's cathartic in a way. And, I love all kinds of actors. I know what my dream client looks like.
I want to hear about that dream client, and I want to hear about the one that's, the client from hell too. But go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, not at all. Not at all. And so I feel like the tools are really like, who are you? Like, who are you? What are you bringing? Stop worrying about, well, I don't know what casting wants. We don't know what the hell we want sometimes. Like you walk in and we're like, what? That was amazing. I haven't seen that all day. Great. Could you do it again? Could you try it this way? Could you try it that way? The amount of directors that I've had the privilege of working with in commercials, a lot of these directors are big television and film directors. And it's amazing to watch them work. It's amazing to see, somebody really get what they need from the talent in a creative way, and somebody who just treats them like a puppet. It's a very different experience, and when I'm in a callback room dealing with people like that. And I always just say to actors, like, listen, you have to know who you are as a human, because if you do not set boundaries for yourself, and you don't know what's important to you, and you don't know how you grieve or how you celebrate your wins, then people are going to change that. People are going to come in and just kind of like whittle away a little bit until you're kind of this rope, like a Judy Garland, right? If you saw the movie, it's like so heartbreaking for me. That you just are kind of like giving your soul over to somebody. And I think I don't want that for my actors. I want them to have a home to come to, and express themselves and go get famous. I don't need you to be at the studio forever. Just come and like work out what you need to work out, be a good person, keep in contact with each other, and go do what makes whatever your trajectory is and what your goal is. Great. Let's get you there.
We've spoken to a few actors who have shared their journey, and a lot of times I ask them, their experiences obviously aren't what they might see on the screen, but they have to grab from that well inside them, deep inside them, to emote those emotions, whether it's anger, whether it's devastation and things like that, whether it's love, so all of those things, it's a lot of people don't want to face that. It's almost like, some people seriously can't look in the mirror and look into their own eyes and be honest with themselves. They would rather, when you're doing your makeup, some people, they just look at their nose or they just look at their lips. They never actually look into their eyes. It's a really fascinating psychology behind that. And with actors, I think if they want to portray something that's real, they have to dig deep and find those dark places or those really happy places. And so I guess it really does take a coach sometimes to bring that out and kind of direct them to that. So speaking of your actors, you did mention your dream client. What is your dream? What does your dream client look like?
I'm lucky. I've attracted quite a few of them. They show up, they do the work, they're willing to, dig deep if they need to. They are open to suggestions, if that makes sense. They can take direction. They don't take it personal, which I think is hard because as an industry, we're asking you to take it personal. And then we're like, okay, no, do this, do this, do this, do that. So the dream client for me is really something that knows where they want to go, and they can set up those mile markers and they can celebrate the wins. And the wins to me are not when you book the job. I always say it's you booking the room. You're not going in to book this job. You're going in to do a kick-ass job in front of that casting director or director, because you might not be right for that role. 90% of the people that show up are not going to be, you're not going to get that role, but you're going to make a good impression. And that person's going to be able to trust that you can come back and do the work, Does that answer your question?
It does. It does. And when we come back, I have to take a little bit of a break because we're going to pay some bills. But then I want to ask you about the client from hell.
Oh, boy.
Hold on 1 second.
Great.
We'll be back right after this.
Check it out. MobileEdge.com has award-winning products with innovative features and contemporary, edgy designs that empower you to look sharp and travel smart with your mobile tech. Your beloved, not to mention expensive gaming gear and mobile tech devices are an extension of you, so give them the protection and style they deserve wherever you go. Find them at MobileEdge.com and protect your tech with Mobile Edge. Bring it on. Hey Geek Insiders, Mobile Edge has a special coupon code for our dedicated listeners. Get 25% off your Mobile Edge gear using coupon code GEEK25. That's GEEK25. Geek out.
I'm going to geek out on that alien product for sure. I totally am doing that. I can't wait to travel again.
You get 25%, right?
I'm buying the whole line.
So welcome back, everybody. We are with Melanie. Mel or Melanie?
Mel Mack is great. Mel Mack from
Mel Mack Acting Studio. Yeah. And so we are, I'd like to hear about the client from hell, because I think it's important for people to know what not to do when they're going out there trying to get the job or trying to work with other people.
Well, there's a couple. So one person in particular, I came to class every week and then would have these long excuses. And at first I was like, I get it. Everybody has, it's not my business to judge. And then at one point I was like, let's talk about this, what's really going on. And then I would coach this person and always give like an extra 5 or 10 minutes. My fault. This is how people learn not to do things, right? And then this individual actor took it to social media and decided to basically blast me for not doing X, Y, and Z. And I called my lawyer, and my lawyer's like, oh yeah, we're going to send a cease and desist letter immediately. So don't do that. I think there's always a conversation to be had with somebody. I think be professional. It's a very, very small world in the entertainment industry. There's, also in casting, people get weird, sending letters that are cryptic and sending them, a couple times a week along with a headshot. And then it's like, call me in. And we're like, are you out of your mind? Like, I'm terrified to have, I think I always tell my actors at the studio, I'm like, you guys, it's a business. How would you go and interview for a job? I've had actors be like, oh, hey, they'll text the office. I'm just going to stop by and say hi. What? I'm like at work. You know what I'm saying? Like, yeah, but I thought maybe something would be right for me. And I don't want to make fun of those actors, but I just think that we have to put our business hats on and think that if we're right for the role and you're on our mind and you've made a good impression, trust me, we're thinking about you. You know what I'm saying? So I always say, however you would adhere when you're getting a job, when you go out in the job world, that's the best way to approach casting. And it depends on the casting director. There's some casting directors that are known for blacklisting. If you don't show up, if you're late, if you're not prepared, and I get it. If you're seeing 80 people a day and I have 45 people asking me, so what do I do? Oh, it's very clear. Sign in on the computer, put in your stats, go ahead and look at the copy and get off book. And I feel like sometimes people can be really lazy about that. And it's super frustrating on the casting side because I want to be able to fight for you when the director says to me at the end of a callback, hey, Mel, what do you think about this actor compared to this actor? What do you know about this actor? And I'm very honest because I know what it's like to be on the other side of the camera and to watch a director have to work with an actor that's super difficult. It completely changes the vibe on set, especially if you're not the star. I mean, if you're the star, okay, kind of. But if you're not, wow, you have to really check yourself, because there's people and I've said before, I'm like, look, this person's a really good actor, but you are going to have a very challenging time for 5 days. And by the way, you guys are going to be on a plane together. So what does that look like sitting next to the person?
Yeah. And I think a lot of people don't realize that what you do is kind of behind the scenes, and you are in touch with a lot of the casting directors and other people who might give them inroads. So treat you well, treat Mel well.
Or just in general, I can't
just be a good person.
Totally. And, my bosses are really incredible humans. And to their testament, we have stars come in for voiceovers that probably wouldn't go to other offices, that come in person, sit down and chat. And they're like, great, let's get in the, one day we were, I think I can say this because it was forever ago. I'm a huge Judith Light fan. And so Judith Light came in to do a voiceover. I was like, and my boss was like, hey, Mel, so you're running the voiceover today. Judith Light is coming. I'm like, oh, no, I'm not going to be doing that. I'm not going to be doing that. I'm not going to give Judith Light direction. So I'm not even going to walk in the room. So you're welcome. I'm going to go home. As a matter of fact, I'm going to go home. And so Judith came in and he's like, Mel's really nervous. And I was like, oh my God. She's like, give me a hug. We still get geeked out. You know what I'm saying? Like it's exciting to see somebody start in a commercial and then they, are being nominated for something. That's really, in that they come back and say hello to everybody. Like that's a professional to me. That's somebody that knows how to work well. They want to work. They know how to work well with other people, and they're humble about it, if that makes any kind of sense.
Oh, sure. Absolutely. Because even when you're learning, when your actors come into the studio, I'm sure they have homework and you want them to be prepared because that is going to be in the back of your head, what their work ethic is, how they're going to process things, whether they're taking it seriously or not. I'm sure that you can see that pretty quickly.
Yep. And there's people I take on, I'm like, they're just going to figure it out. They're going to get to a point where we're going to have a discussion. I'm very hands-on. We're a boutique acting studio because that I'm comfortable with that. I want to help people succeed, but there's times where I'm like, look, you either have to shit or get off the pot because I care about you, but people aren't going to care. If you can't get it on set, they're not going to care. You're going to get fired. If you think that you're not going to get fired by doing that kind of work, you're out of your mind. There's like 50 other people knocking on the door. And I'm also, because of my trajectory and how I ended up in acting, it's a miracle that I booked television shows. Like I look back now at my residuals. I'm lucky because all the shows I booked went in syndication, so I still get like residuals from 20 years ago. But, I think it's really important for, I don't know, just for actors to know where they're headed and to know that it's a business and I'm always like, you got to have your ducks in the row. You got to, you're off book. That's your job. Right. You know what I'm saying? And I think too often I'm finding myself saying that a lot lately in auditions.
Yeah. It's one thing to put in the work and stuff like that, but I think when people are too often going, yeah, I did great. I think they're blowing smoke up their own butts.
Yeah, because it's the classic, like, I bombed that. Whenever an actor will come to me and say, and I'm lucky because I have actors who've stayed at the studio since we opened 6 years ago. So I've seen them go from no agent to an agent, to booking work, to having this great resume. So it's really exciting, And as soon as I hear one of those actors say, it was awful, in my head, I'm like, they definitely booked it. They either booked it or got a call back because they were probably just in it and they weren't directing themselves and trying to control it,
That's the crazy thing about the zone. And that's probably one of the best ways that I've heard describe the zone, because there have been times I've been on a couple of singing auditions and classically trained and all that stuff. So I'll never be a rock and roll star, although I always wanted to be, but that's not going to happen. I know my limitations.
Hey, Joan Jett was right down the street for me, so you always connected there.
Oh my God!
I know. I'm always like, oh my God, it's Joan.
And at some point you're out there with your coffee cup and like, hey, right? Yeah, I'm cool too.
Totally cool.
That's so funny. So you have a whole range of students, though, from different age groups. So you deal with child actors as well as the older actors. Who's easier to work with?
Parents are challenging to work with. That's my answer. That is my answer. I think I also do a really good job of vetting people. I feel like I'm good at that. We're also a word of mouth studio, but I think the kids that we have are kids that have been on series, or kids that are working actors. Quite a few of them are homeschooled. They're very business savvy. They're so smart. Yeah. They're so smart. I'm like, wait, what? Okay. Yeah. Great. I also have, I have incredible teachers that have been through this studio that also teach the kids and help me with the adults as well. So I feel very lucky in that sense. For me, it's important that you're just not coming and learning the same thing week after week. And I feel, like I'm just like ad nauseum saying the same thing. So I try to bring in guest teachers so that they can really, infuse the studio with some excitement and inspiration. That's when people can be a little difficult. Oh, I can't believe that you didn't tell us we were having somebody. I would have been off book. I'm like, oh, that's interesting. So for the guest, you wouldn't have been as challenging. You got it.
Right. And the idea here is, if you are in public and you want to have a persona or you want to build that reputation and stuff, you have to be on all the time. I think what you do at home is completely different. But again, if you want to book, whether you're just hanging out and maybe it is casual or something, you still have to have, I think, a little bit of a front, to say, I'm still a professional. You don't want to be dragging anybody out or holding their hair back, when they're getting sick because they had too much or party too much. And then that's where a lot of the excuses come in. And it's like, you have to be in charge of your destiny.
I love that, Meredith. Yeah. I'm totally stealing that. You do. Yeah. You really do. And you just have to also be, I understand that, like having a little bit of like saran wrap, kind of between you and somebody else. But I think there also can come a time where you just have a conversation if you're at a party and suddenly somebody's a director or a cinematographer. Like we can feel it gets weird when you get weird. But if you just kind of, I always say, don't talk about business. Nobody is at a party because they want to talk about business. And I'm just like, well, what do I say in my agent meeting when they say, tell us a little bit about yourself? Or in casting, I'm like, we literally mean tell us about yourself, not your acting. We have your resume. What is something, what makes you unique? What are you passionate about? Like, I'm a bird nerd. I've also become like a super tech geek over the past, like 8 weeks. I was like terrible in technology. Now I'm like, oh, I got to have all the things.
Yeah, I need a nap intervention.
Yeah. But those are the things that make people really interesting. And that's why we want to be on set with you for 90 days. Because you can also hang out,
Yeah, definitely. Now, tell me a little bit about your emergency audition survival kit.
Oh,
I'm kind of curious about that because, again, I've gone on auditions. It's more, for music, to whether be in a choir or whether to try and get a soloist role. And the one time I just said, you know what, screw it. I'm just going to go for the big one. I'm going to audition for the Met.
Yeah.
And I was like, yeah, I'm going for it. And I had my music prepared and I had the flu. I had no voice.
Oh my God.
And I showed up anyway. Now I'm going back decades. Decades. But I had the flu and there was just nothing I could do about it. And for me, I was like, oh man, if I had some kind of emergency kit or somebody to tell me what to do, like, do I show up? Don't I show up? What's worse? And it was like picking the best of the worst situation, of the worst possible choices and stuff. So I saw the emergency audition survival kit and I was just like, I need to hear more about that.
Well, what did you do? First of all, did you show up and you sang?
I showed up and I sang and I was miserable and I had the tissues hanging off of me and it was terrible. It was terrible. And they weren't forgiving because they really needed to know who, what the voice was. And then, after that, life happens. It's like, okay, I chose marriage instead of a singing career. And who knows how far that could have taken me, if at all. But it was just one of those experiences where I can say, you know what, I actually auditioned for the Met. I'm like, don't ask me how it wound up, but I actually did it. And it's just one of those, it's like a notch in my bedpost. I did that.
Yes. I love those kind of wins. They're incredibly important, and that's what makes like, how cool. How many people have done that?
Yeah.
Yeah, not all
and I must have been out of my mind to even think that I could be in the same room with some of these singers. But I didn't care because I was just like, you know what? I'm just going to give it a shot because you never know.
You never know.
Like you were at a restaurant and people were like, oh, yeah, just audition. And here you are. And you have residual income.
I mean, I think the first film I auditioned for was the lead opposite Adam Sandler. And then the next one was Naomi Judd booked that. That was back. I mean, what? Do you know what I'm saying? So you just never know where that trajectory is going to take you. But I love that you asked this question because I get that actor brain of like, oh my God, I'm sick, but I need to go because this could be my chance. And if I don't do it, it's never going to come again, and I always say, defer to your agent and manager. I'd much rather you have come on your A game. I mean, now you can self-tape, right? Now we're in self-tape land. But, it's something that I think it's really important to think about. Like, I don't want an actor coming in and being sick all over the place. I'm like healthy as an ox, but I know that some people freak out about that, right?
Yeah.
I think it's really important when you have representation, you need to communicate with them. I've had actors on set before all of this happened. And, an emergency to me is if you're on set and you booked a job and suddenly they're handing you copy to do another commercial spot, and that's not in your contract, and you're a smart actor because you paid attention in class when we talk about that stuff, that is an emergency. You get on the phone with your agent and you don't get worried that you're going to piss off somebody in production or they're asked, but they were so nice about it. I'm like, yeah, of course they were nice about it. I don't have to pay you. So you need to hop on the phone with your agent and let them know that before you shoot anything. That's an actor emergency to me. And just giving actors the tools from a casting point of view, this is normal. These are things that you guys might have to deal with, right? In a situation where you might be uncomfortable on set, that's an emergency. You need to contact your representation or you need to walk out, if it's something as far as that goes.
And I think a lot of people, I was going to say, people don't have the confidence to do that a lot of times, because they want to say yes. They want to be the good guy. They want to be perceived as the person who will get the job done. But at the same time, they have to understand that it is a business and there are 100 ways to Sunday to be taken advantage of.
Yeah. Yeah. And, I also think of it, I'm just going to throw this out there. So one of the shows that I booked because I was over it, I'm like, this is again, I got in that place where I'm like, I'm never auditioning again. This is the last show I'm doing. And it was for Will and Grace. And I'm like, I don't care. It's like 3 lines. I don't really care about it. I was always like very diligent. So I end up booking the job. And this is when they would send scripts to your house via Messenger. And so my agent was like, it's a very big guest star that you're going to work with. I was like, oh my God, it's Cher. Like, I just knew it in my heart. I'm like, if it's Cher, I'm going to lose my mind. And it ended up being Madonna. And it was like even bigger for me because it was like early 2000s, and I grew up with Madonna. And I was like, this is what I can, again, a Judith Light moment. And so I get to set and got to work with Jimmy Burrows, who's like a brilliant multi-camera sitcom director. And it was just Madonna and I and this other guy, Todd, that I knew from commercial acting. And I remember Madonna being like, I don't know why I would say this line. And Jimmy was like, because when you say it, it's funny. And I remember Todd and I just being like, oh my God, it's Madonna. And so at one point it got, she was just, whenever you're on set, I always tell actors, especially if you're on a multi-camera sitcom and you can be there for a couple of days and, hey, do you want to sit in the audience and watch people rehearse? Yes, you do. Mm-hmm. And so I got to see somebody like really work hard, and acting isn't necessarily this person's forte, right? So I had so much more respect. And then came shoot day and she kept forgetting to like do the one physical thing that she needed to do. And I'm like, oh, I'm going to get fired if you don't do this. And I remember when she first walked on set, the first day of rehearsal, she was like, oh, nice boots. And I was like, oh yeah. She goes, mine are better. I'm like, I don't think so. Mine are vintage. And from that moment to when like day 3, when I was like, it's really important that you do this. She was like, okay, do you want me to do this instead? I'm like, no, I just need you to do what it says in the script. And she was like, okay. Because I feel like you get to a point, I know I'm talking about Madonna, but you get to a point where people yes you to death. Creative people don't need to be yes to death, right? Mm-hmm. If you were sick or if you didn't agree with something, there's a way to say it, right? Like, you know what? I'm not really comfortable with this. It wasn't in my contract. I just need to hop on the phone quick with my agent. Or, just voicing it in a way that's assertive and not aggressive so that you can still get your point across. You know what I'm saying? People don't want to be around that. I mean, just imagine if somebody's like, oh yeah, no, I love that. Yeah. But do you? Because I also know what you don't like about it, so it makes it better.
Yeah. I always tell people all the time, how you turn a phrase makes a huge difference. There's a big difference between saying, I'm uncomfortable with that, to turning it around and saying, you're a jerk. Yeah. It's like the same messaging, but it's not.
Yeah. Yeah.
how you turn the phrase and just say, because I might be uncomfortable, I need to take a phone call, I need to make sure that this is good. Uh, Instead of going, oh no, what a jerk for even asking me, and just having that attitude. Again, you were saying with a lot of creative people, they want to be giving and they want to say yes and stuff, but they have to be assertive too, and they have to be smart about it. And I think that's really important. The coaching that you do is so important for people to understand the difference and maybe getting that nuance of the language and how they talk to people. So again, it's one of those things. Okay, so that leads me to the next question, and I know I'm like over half an hour here, so I thank you for your time here. But I guess the question is, when actors are looking for a studio, what should they be wary of?
Anybody that tells you they're going to make you a star for $2,500 in 3 days, you should be leery of that. I had an actor come like, oh, I signed up for this thing and it was $2,500 and they said X, Y, and Z. Sweet, kind, like amazing human being, just brand new. Everybody starts off brand new. Acting is, I don't want to say it's the one thing, but it's something that I've been involved in for 20 years. Nobody says like, hey, Meredith, do X, Y, and Z. We just expect you to know. Like with this whole self-taping thing going on, I just started teaching a self-taping class last month because I'm like, nobody is telling you guys or showing you how to do it. But from the casting side, we're like, hey, send us a self-tape. Make sure the lighting's good. Make sure the sound is good. But how? How are you supposed to do that? And so I feel like anybody who asks you for money up front, you definitely need to do your research. That's why I'm a fan of like, ask your actor friends, Google people to read about them. Like, I think if you have to separate your desperation, right? It's like that drama from the data kind of thing. Like, okay, what is the data on this person? Who's been successful with this person? How do I feel? I had an actor come to one of my consultations and he's like, wow, this was only 30 minutes, but like you read sides with me. We talked about my marketing. Like, I feel like I'm leaving here in 30 minutes I know I like have steps, and I'm like, good. Because nobody gave me that. You know what I mean? I just had to figure it out. And he's like, yeah, this other person that I went to was like, hey, you should meditate. And these are the crystals that I suggest. I am totally into that stuff, by the way, like with that, but not when it comes. And this person paid that person $450 for that advice.
Yeah. I cannot stand when people take advantage because maybe they have a skill, or maybe they're just better at marketing and really more depth to it. So it's just a really important lesson to vet the people that you want to work with, I think. And I think that kind of goes, I guess if you are trying to cast anybody, personality is important. Yeah.
Huge.
And then whether or not they may or may not get along. I mean, because I can't, with everything that's out there in media, I know that everybody doesn't get along. And sometimes you can actually see that on screen.
Right.
So that's got to be very challenging. What do you do as somebody who does a lot of casting or recommending and stuff like that? How do you pull back a bad decision?
You can't. In the commercial world, it used to be, a director and maybe one other person in the room. And now you have like sometimes 12 people. We did this job where there was a director in LA on a TV, and then there was somebody in Chicago on another TV. And then they had like their own person in somewhere else, like fixing the sound. And then you walk into like 12 people sitting on the couch. And so, again, what I love about working at House is like you get to know your clients, right? And so you just try to give them the best information possible and really guide them. And then sometimes it's one of those things like, I don't want to tell you I told you so, but or it's one of those things where it's just a job, right? Hit the mark, do your thing. I tell actors, I'm like, if you think that you show up to set and the director's like, oh God, I hope they can act, I'm really hoping they can act, you guys. No, it's like, sit on the couch at this mark, hit that mark, do this here, they just expect everything to be together. And you were saying earlier about fake it till you make it. In those situations, either I would say, ask somebody, another actor, maybe, I had that happen on NCIS. Is that NCIS with Mark Harmon? And he played a joke on me and it was terrifying because it was a small role. And he was like, oh, you got the new script. You got the new rewrites, right? And I was like, wait, what?
And you're like,
oh, yeah,
deer in the headlights.
Totally. And that couldn't be better timing because as soon as he said that, he's like, yeah, Mel, just work off me and rolling. And I was like, oh my God. Right. But sometimes it benefits you if you're comfortable around somebody and it is your first time and you don't know if you're supposed to ask the PA, and then you get on set and one of the actors is talking to you that's been on the show for a while. You got to like figure it out and sometimes just ask people for help, and that comes back to what you were saying, Meredith, earlier about like, you really have to have a solid foundation. And I think as artists, a lot of times we go into the art world because we don't have that. And we do have a lot to express, but hopefully along the way through, you were saying some tools, vision boarding, working out or getting out in nature, some things that can take you out of that realm of Hollywood are really important to remind you, that you're right where you're supposed to be. You're perfect how you're supposed to be. And those words can be really hard. Perfect isn't the right word, and I feel like every job that you come to is there for a reason. I've done jobs with like directors where I've cried, I've cried in between. I'm like, why is this? And I'm super competitive. So acting was like the worst place for me to be. So I'm like, hey, why didn't I get it? You know what I mean? And, that I was on set one time with this guy who was just I felt like he was purposely doing things to actors like most directors say rolling. It would literally be like 3 minutes. And makeup is always your best friend because makeup told me when I sat down, get ready for a day. And he purposely would wait like 3 minutes. And so I just learned through Meisner, like you should be doing stuff before, you're in your character. And all of a sudden, I was at the end of doing what I was supposed to be doing. And he'd be like, cut. And I'm like, did we even roll? Like what is going on? And I started to get really upset and beat myself up. And I had to take a moment. And I'm like, I am 41 years old. I know who I am. And it's not cool. So I'm just going to roll with this. And I am just going to do what I think is right. And I'm going to defer to him and make him feel good and just call it a day. And that's when it becomes a paycheck.
Yeah.
And the thing is, everybody knows this director now. So it goes both ways. I think wherever you're at in the entertainment industry.
Yeah. And I've heard stories about some directors who, Clint Eastwood, for example. I heard that he's very quiet. He likes a calm set. And, when he's getting ready to roll the cameras and he's like, and go, whereas some people are like, get ready, it's just like alarm bells and stuff like that. And it's shocking. And it almost gets you out of the role. So to roll with that, again, I think that speaks to knowing yourself as a person and what, how to roll with it. And again, letting it go, just saying, you know what, I'm going to do the best job that I can do because I don't want the next person looking at my body of work or asking somebody about me and saying, well, she was a Class A jerk because, the director was a jerk, but so was she, and she didn't handle it well. And that reputation, bad news travels so quickly, but good news takes a lot of effort, And so when you're building up your reputation and things like that is very important, Mel. Very important to say, but you don't have to voice it out loud when you're saying, you know what, this was just a paycheck. You don't have to say that. That can stay in your inside voice.
Right. Absolutely. Or your journal. You can just write it when you get back. Yeah. Just write it when you get back to your trailer.
Yeah, I love writing, so I kill people in my fiction. So there is.
I always burn the pages. I'm like,
Right?
right.
I don't have time for jail.
Oh, I love it.
We are getting towards the end of this. And at the end, I always ask my guests one question. And that is, if you could go back in time and tell your younger self one piece of advice, what would it be?
Wow. It would honestly be you're a force, and don't let anybody take that away from you.
That's amazing. I got goosebumps with that answer. Great answer.
I had to think about it for a second, but
Yeah, because we don't when we're younger, we don't think so. You know, all of those growing pains and everything, life.
So messy. But that's
It
the good
is.
stuff. That's where all the messy is where the good is, you know?
Yeah. And is there anything else that you might want to say? Any shout outs to people?
Oh, who do people shout out to?
You can shout out anybody. You're like, hi, Mom.
Oh my God. Shout out to anybody?
Anybody.
Man, I'm going to shout out to, they just want to be like, thank yous, really.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Meredith, this is like the hardest part of the interview. This is the hardest part.
Sorry.
I'm going to shout out to one of my actors and teachers, Sam McLaughlin. It's his birthday. I want to celebrate him.
Happy birthday.
Yeah, happy birthday. I want to shout out to, I don't know. My God, I'm like, I'm shocked that because I feel like I have a list of people.
Right. And you know what? I'm going to let you off the hook with that because, you know, we don't want to offend anybody either. It's one of those difficult questions. It's like, why are you asking me this? Damn it. Because I'm always going to forget one person and they're going to be the ones that call me later on tonight and go, thanks a lot.
I know. How could you do that to me?
Right.
What? You know, there's so many people who've let me sleep on their couches, people who have like fed me, people who've lent me money when I didn't have money from, you know, when my place burned down. My friend Sarah Erickson, I could shout out to her and her husband, Peter. Thank you for that. You know, one thing I do want to say, Meredith, before we go, you never get there alone. You never, ever get where you're going by yourself. There's always people that are supporting you and loving you and helping you and guiding you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Very good way to end. Thank you so much. Don't go anywhere. I'm going to pop you in the green room and we'll finish up. But I'm just going to put this up here and end the broadcast. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in to Lady Geek Live. We'll see you next week. And thank you, Mel Mack of Mel Mack Acting Studio.
Say that 5 times fast.
Yeah, do that again. Mel Mack Acting Studio. When I saw MMAS, I was just like,
what?
Fighting? No, we don't do that here. I think you did that on purpose because you are a fighter. You get in the ring and you just knock it out of the park.
Thanks, Meredith.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you for tuning in to Lady Geek Live, a Geek Insider production powered by NSC Live TV. Become part of our show with sponsorship and advertising opportunities. For details, contact advertising@geekinsider.com or visit podcast.geekinsider.com. The Geek Insider podcast is available on your favorite app, so please hit the follow button and share it out to your friends. Because if you don't, you might have to turn in your geek card.